So today we're going to look at the presidential and parliamentary system. I guess we'll take them one by one because they are big topics in themselves. When we were discussing sometime in the previous term, we mentioned separation of power in the presidential system and in the parliamentary system, right? So I'm going to bring it up again and use it to explain further. So you may have to go back to the separation of power to understand, read it again, watch the video, and try to grasp what we're trying to explain there. So we're going to define this system of government, state its features, list its merits and demerits. So in a presidential system, we're simply trying to say that all executive powers are vested in one person called the president. In other words, the president is both the head of state and head of government. Nigeria became a presidential, shifted from parliamentary system of government to presidential in 1979. As at the time we gained independence from British government, we were practicing parliamentary system of government. In 1963, we became a republic, but still parliamentary system of government. So after the military coups and the counter coups that followed the 60s to the 70s, as at 1979, we shifted from parliamentary to presidential system of government. And Shehu Shagari was our first executive president. This is you may see the current affairs question, maybe in WAEC. I don't know whether it still comes up, but take note of that. The first executive president of Nigeria is Alhaji Shehu Shagari, 1979. So let's go further. So this president is elected by the electorate, either directly or indirectly. In Nigeria, we do direct election, while in USA, we do indirectly through an electoral college, right? And so that means he or she is not chosen by the legislature, and he's not a member. So there's a clear-cut separation of power in a presidential system of government as against parliamentary, where both the head of state, head of government is fused together with the lawmakers and whatsoever. In a presidential, there is a division in the organs of government. So there is what we call full-time separation of governmental powers. The executive is accountable to the people. The legislature is on their own. The judiciary is on their own as well. So the president appoints the member of his cabinet, his ministers, and he can sack them at will. So if you look carefully well, Nigeria began this system in 1979, and it ended in 1983 because of the coup, Buhari's coup, and began in 1999, and it's still happening till date. So what are the features of this system of government? The president is both head of state and head of government. We say that one person, both powers. There is the principle of separation of power. So it is not merged, there is no fusion. Executive on its own, legislature on its own, judiciary on its own, right? So checks and balances works here properly. So the president and his ministers are not members of the parliament. So if you turn this thing around, you would see what we have in the parliamentary system of government. The president exercises real executive powers because he's both head of state and head of government. So he's elected by the people, that's the electorate, either directly or indirectly, right? When we say indirectly, we mean through an elected college, right? So he has some judiciary powers, like powers to pardon political prisoners. We call it the prerogative of mercy. Take note of this term, prerogative of mercy. He can appoint the judges at the Supreme Court. He can give assent to bills, right? He can perform both legislative and judiciary function. Pardoning prisoners is judiciary function, right? Assenting bills, or at times the president can even make some laws, right? Take note of that. So he has both legislative and judiciary functions. So principle of checks and balances apply in this system because the organs of government are separated, so they can watch each other. The president is not above politics, of course. He is a member of a political party, even though he's elected directly by the people. The rule of law works here properly, right? So let's look at some advantages of this system. There is a clear separation of power, which prevents the misuse of power. It prevents dictatorship, tyranny, and whatsoever. It cuts it because power is shared between the organs of government. So there's a limit to what the president can do. Checks and balances thrives in this system. So the president can be monitored or be checked upon by other organs of government. There is a fixed tenure of office. So the president stays, for example, in Nigeria, 4 years, per tenure, right? Now, it prevents the emergence of a dictator because power is shared, checks and balances, separation of power. There is what we call executive control. The president has the effective control of the executive arm of government and can lay off any minister who is not performing accordingly. It's called effective executive control. In the parliamentary, there is what we call collective responsibility. When we get there, it is the opposite of this effective executive control. So it is easy to apportion blame to any organ of government that's defaulting because each of them are on their own. So you can say the judiciary messed up, executive messed up. This organ of government is not doing well, right? So this type of government encourages massive participation, popular participation, because the president is elected by the people. So he needs the majority. Now, this system of government, therefore, encourages democracy because people are given the power to elect their presidents, right? I'm going to rest my case here. Let's take a look at the demerits. It may breed dictators since powers corrupt. So concentrating both powers, head of state and head of government in one person, may push us towards dictatorship. Don't forget the president has both legislative and judiciary powers. Sometimes it can be abused. Now, lobbying is a feature of this system of government. It's a feature of the system of government where people can pressure the legislature to take on certain bills that may suit them. So it works more often in a presidential system of government. So it can lead to widespread corruption. It is very expensive to run or operate because there is duplication of governmental functions. Remember, president at the central level, state governor at the state level, right? Let me go back to this lobbying. For example, the lawmaking organ of the government wants to pass a bill that will increase the output of Nigerian power sector. Some people can go to them and bribe them and lobby them and give them gifts, incentives, not to pass that bill so that they can keep importing generators, gensets, and whatsoever. And it can happen, and that bill will not pass, right? That bill will fail to not get the majority required to pass, to become a law, right? So lobbying happens. So that's why it can breed corruption. So if you look at, there's a friction between the executive and legislative, right? So the friction can, maybe one of them is not allowing the other do what he or she wants to do, and they may try to like victimize each other. So it can be a problem as well, right? They may try to like fight each other. So it is difficult to control the president since he is not responsible to the legislator, right? He is responsible to the people. So sometimes he can get away with certain things and get it done with. So he has the power to dismiss any member of his cabinet, and he can use that tool to deal with those he hates or those that fall out of favor with him. It's possible, right? So remember, we looked at the following points here. Define the presidential system of government, look at its features, mention its merits and demerits. So if you have any question, put it in the comment section. Personally, I think for countries like Nigeria, we can make do with this system of government. Of course, I understand its demerits, but in this kind of situation, once the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, we go along with them. But can you mention like 5 advantages? Can you defend presidential system of government? Do you like it? Do you think it's workable in a country like Nigeria? What are your reasons if you think so? Kindly share in the comment section.